everybody. Welcome to the Nimoy Studio. I'm Claudia Bester. I'm the Director of Public Programs here at the Hammer Museum, and I'm very pleased to welcome you all to tonight's program with Nina Eidsheim and Wadada Leo Smith. Before we begin, I'd like to invite you all back to the Hammer Museum to see our current exhibitions of artwork by Larry Pittman, Yoonhee Min, Max Hooper Schneider, and Yasmina Medwali. Admission to our museum galleries is always free. We also have hundreds of great free public programs coming up, including Constitution Happy Hour, which is kind of like a book club where we read and discuss passages from the Constitution with leading constitutional scholars as our guides. On November 12th, UCLA history professor Brenda Stevenson will lead a Hammer Forum on reparations for slavery and what that might look like in the United States. On November 14th, we'll have an artist talk by the newest UCLA Department of Art faculty member, Vishal Jagdeo. On November 20th, we're screening the film Sankofa, and the director, Haile Jarima, will be here in person to have a post-screening discussion. And on November 26th, labor leader Ai-jen Poo will be here in conversation with artist and Black Lives Matter co-founder Alicia Garza. So we have lots of great free public programs going on here at the Hammer, and I want to invite you all to come back. Now on to tonight's program. I want to thank a number of extraordinary partners who came together to make tonight's program possible. The UCLA Herb Alpert School of Music, represented tonight by its inaugural dean, Eileen Strempel, as well as the UCLA Music Library's Hugo DeVries Fund for Contemporary Music, the UCLA Global Jazz Studies Program, the Herbie Hancock Institute, and the UCLA Departments of Ethnomusicology, Music, and Musicology, the Office of the Dean of Humanities, and the UCLA Interdisciplinary and Cross-Campus Visiting Scholar Funding Opportunity. It takes a village. We're grateful to all of them for bringing our two brilliant guests here tonight, Nina Eidsheim and Wadada Leo Smith. Nina Eidsheim is a professor of musicology at the UCLA Herb Alpert School of Music. As a scholar and singer, she investigates the multisensory and performative aspects of the production, perception, and reception of 20th and 21st century music. She's the author of two important monographs, Sensing Sound, Listening and Singing as Vibrational Practice, and The Race of Sound, Listening, Timbre, and Vocality in African American Music. And she's the co-editor of the Refiguring American Music book series, all published by the Duke University Press. She's also the co-editor of the Oxford Handbook of Voice Studies, published by the Oxford Press. Her work has been supported by fellowships from the Mellon Foundation, the Cornell University Society of the Humanities, the UC President's Faculty Research Fellowship, and the American Council of Learned Societies. And she's currently collaborating on a book and a performance project with the brilliant trumpeter, composer, and multi-instrumentalist improviser, Wadada Leo Smith. Wadada is one of the most acclaimed musicians of his time. For the last 5 decades, he's been a member of the legendary experimental collective AACM, otherwise known as the Association for the Advancement of Creative Musicians. He's published over 70 albums and garnered innumerable prizes and awards, including Trumpeter of the Year, Jazz Artist of the Year, and Jazz Album of the Year from Downbeat magazine, Artist of the Year from Jazz Times, and his 2013 album 10 Freedom Summers was nominated for the Pulitzer Prize in Music. His compositions often use a graphical notation system he calls Ankhrasmation, which he developed in 1970, and these visually gorgeous Ankhrasmation scores have recently been exhibited at the Renaissance Society at the University of Chicago and right here at the Hammer Museum. And Wadada was the recipient of the Hammer Museum's 2016 Mona Award for Career Achievement, as well as the 2016 Doris Duke Artist Award. And he's currently in residency at UCLA as the 2019 UC Regents Lecturer. Tomorrow, Friday, November 8th, Wadada will be awarded the UCLA Dean Medal, the university's highest honor, for individuals who have made truly extraordinary contributions to their professions, to higher education, to our society, and to the people of UCLA. So it's really an honor to have him here again. Please join me in welcoming Nina Eidsheim and Wadada Leo Smith.
Hello, thank you for having us. I just wanted to first start to, in addition to Claudia's many thanks to our partners, also thank Claudia and the extraordinary staff here at the Hammer Museum for making this event possible. There have been so many people working behind the scenes to allow us to be and share this moment together tonight. So thank you, thank you, thank you. What's going to happen tonight is that I'm first going to share some reflections on Mr. Smith's work, and then we'll have a conversation together, and then we'll open up for questions. Does that sound okay? Good. All right. So the German psychoanalyst Erich Fromm writes about the practice of love, from romantic to family and societal. He overturns modern Western ideals when he writes that the work of love is not to find the right love object, but to understand and commit to the practice and work of loving. In other words, love is conditional. It thrives when nourished and starves when left unattended. Life's aliveness is also conditional. To experience aliveness is neither a human right nor a natural law. Therefore, there's nothing wrong if life is not experienced in this way. However, many of us yearn for the experience. Some of us will sacrifice everything to have it, and we will feel that we will die if we're not able to occasionally slip back into that feeling. Love is an art, a practice, Fromm explains. However, it's not just a practice with a clear outcome. Rather, it is a practice that yields energy for the practice itself, energizing aliveness. Practice means that sensation is not transmitted through an object, a love object, or a concert executed excellently, but is experienced through doing, experimenting, risking, contemplating, redoing, re-engaging. Practice involves a commitment to the unknown, the uncomfortable, the unsettling, the exciting, the mysterious. The path to aliveness does not follow a linear pattern and is often elusive. What are aliveness and vitality? Aliveness is a sense of growth and change. Vitality is the force that propels that life. Some think of it as eroticism, as distinct from mere sexuality, which is only a very narrow part of it. They think of eroticism as spiritual, transcendent, and a mystical experience. These concepts point to vibrancy, movement, and renewal. Together, they establish a zone of experience in which we feel propelled by a force stronger than human, rational understanding and action eclipsing known references. American composer and trumpet player Wadada Leo Smith has created a zone of imagination through his symbolic language, Ankhrasmation. While Smith's scores are extremely precise, the premise of relationality is in the music's DNA, in contrast to pitch or time being tethered to a metric grid. Performers are also given room to research their own meaning around Ankhrasmations, symbols, and colors. Here, sounds are always understood in relation to and as connected to each other, with no meaning if conceived in isolation or separated from the whole. And these relationships are not limited to a so-called performance, but can be longer than that note in Beethoven's Fifth, or with a higher velocity than this Alice Coltrane solo. In this way, Smith's music provides opportunities for ways of being, where meaning-making, that is power, is not exclusive but shared and therefore infinite. That is, no one can control the so-called correct meaning, but the meaning is understood to develop like each new step in the scientific discovery process. For example, Smith says, a scale is just a scale unless you do something with it. The scale holds no inherent power or meaning. These are only granted through socio-cultural processes. In reading Smith's work within the context of American composition and in employing tools appropriate to this context, we can draw connective lines from the granular music theory and composition level to the ethical and political level, where his scores invite people to consider self and other changing power structures by thinking together. To the cosmic level, where he offers a musical process that can help us in our quest for answers to the three fundamental spiritual questions: who am I? What should I do? and how should I live? In other words, Ankhrasmation gives us the grammar with which to move into a zone of unassigned signifiers. In this zone of inspiration, what something means is not known. Meaning can only be known in proportion and in relationship, and may also shift in a flash, seeming without reason. This language comes with no lexicon. Instead, each participant brings their own, which shows how meaning is built rather than invoked. When each lexicon is put to use within the context of Ankhrasmation, it will no longer be recognizable in the way it was outside that zone, where definitions, relationships, and spatial configurations are non-reproducible and non-repeatable. Thus, following the definition of ritual, Ankhrasmation operates unconcerned with the limitations of life, reaching, recall from the practice of the erotic. The ritual zone of the erotic has a built-in transgressive force. In this space there is risk, as its meanings are not ossified but shifting. It's a space in which internal revolutions take place. It's a form that propels the living room, the classroom, and the concert stage into the yet to be imagined. The erotic is a source of power, Audre Lorde asserts. In touch with the erotic, she elaborates, I become less willing to accept powerlessness or those other supplied states of being which are not native to me, such as resignation, despair, self-effacement, depression, self-denial. In my experience, Ankhrasmation helps us travel into that zone. But as every person who has affected change in this world knows, more important than being convinced of one idea or another is to live as if that idea was true. And now, we're going to learn more about Ankhrasmation for its discoverer, Wadada Leo Smith. So, you have been working very closely on a completely new compositional language. You call it a symbolic language, in fact. And it's not a new type of notation. And like we can have seen for extended techniques, for instance, in fact, you don't think about it as notation at all. Again, it's a language. And you don't think about it as a graphic score either. And this has been a long time in the making. You tell stories from the 1960s where you started this process of discovery, and it's been unfolding for 50 years. More than 50 years. But I would say that while the symbols have been developing and maturing over more than 50 years, and you have been learning about it throughout that time, the underlying force has remained the same. It's the process of uncovering these layers of what actually has remained the same. So today I'm going to ask you a number of very specific questions about this notational language, and we have some scores that we might be going back and forth between. We'll see.
Yes, it's harder to think about it sometimes when we think of notation, because it's not actually notation. And it's hard to think about it when we talk about composition, because it's not composition. Composition is here, notation is there, Ankhrasmation is here. And the clearest way of looking at it is to think about it just as a language, not better or worse, not different because it needs to be different, but different because it was another kind of way of thinking about making art that was discovered as opposed to something I made. I didn't make Ankhrasmation, it was discovered. And once you discover something, you never have to find it again. Yeah. So, yes.
Yes. So, in some of your scores, I'm going to scroll now. Maybe it disappeared. I think it disappeared, the one that we wanted to. Okay. Well, let's start with this then.
Yeah.
In some of your scores, if I'm not paying close attention, I can mistake one of these symbols to be maybe some kind of variation of Western notation, and I know that is true. It's radically different. Can you explain how, for instance, one of these signs here that might be thought about as derived from Western notation is not?
Well, basically, when you're looking at what I'm doing, I've broken all those sounds into either long sounds or short sounds. Simple as that. And that's not something that you have to kind of remember, except that the long sounds generally establish some kind of atmosphere, horizontal or vertical. And the black sounds, which are short, they establish movement. So it's basically long sound static, short sound movement. And in Western music, I guess you could call it Western music. I mean, you got long sounds, short sounds everywhere. But in Western music, they have this metrical notion about music. And when I reflect on that idea, I even break that down to the simplest quality, which means that any metrical form that anyone can imagine or create or design or fix is either odd or even, no more than that. And then when you think about how do you get past or make something different than metrics, you come up with this idea of proportions. So long, short is a proportion. If I have 15,000 people playing a long sound, I'm going to have 15,000 different realities of that long sound. And all of them are going to be long. That's what's so cool about it. And then secondly, the same thing with this idea of short sounds. If I have 200,000 people playing it, I got 200,000 short sounds. So why did I do that? I did it because I was trying to make it so that when the performer has gotten into that zone of making art, that they don't have to think about what's coming next. In long-short relationship, whatever or wherever you go in the score, it's going to either be long or short. And you don't have to figure that out. So the zone that you're in while you're creating, you never is disturbed. It never breaks away from that. Okay? So because those notes are long and they're rounded in some kind of way, well, everything is rounded. I mean, Kandinsky said that a dot represents every kind of form that you can imagine. And a dot itself, he says, is a line because once you put speed to it, it creates a line. So those round notes, even though we reflect on them coming from Western culture is a young stage in the development, human development. It's not like some kind of trillion years ago. It's just yesterday.
Yeah. And at the same time as you have long and this notion of long and short, which is really beautiful, you also have this concept of and symbols of velocity units.
Yeah, that's the, well, so the long and short relationship, they actually came out of the notion of rhythm units, okay? And what makes a rhythm unit a proportional rhythm unit is that there is, again, a long and short sound, but after the long sound comes a relative equivalence of silence. And after the short sound, the same thing, a relative equivalence of silence. So one rhythm unit set has both a long and a short in it, and also that's the audibility of the sound, and it has a silence of a long and a short. So when we think about that as just part of the language, the mobility occurs in the velocity units. And by velocity units, there are what? There are four. There are four slow and four fast. Each one being either a little bit slower than the other one, a little bit faster than the other one. But the fast and the slow is not determined by any kind of gauge except the person that's performing it. So again, if you have 3 or 4 people playing a velocity unit, you will have that many velocity units happening at the same time, all authentically real to that person.
Do you want to point? You can put
Uh,
this and point.
Well, let's see if I can point.
Okay.
I'll try it. Well, in here, for example, this is a velocity unit, okay, and that's number one. If it was black and white, it would be, that one would be, that one would be on the slow side. This one here, right now, it's got color and it's got red and silver. So that means that the slow side and the fast side is simultaneously connected inside of the color. So it's either fast or slow. And the artist that's performing can actually make it use both of those dimensions, fast or slow. That's velocity unit number 4. On the fast side, it's absolutely fast and it's absolutely dense. It has no space inside of it whatsoever. And all the material that is evolving off of that one unit right there, which is the fast side, it's so dense, and the evolution of musical ideas are the absolute fastest. So there's no moment of break or anything like that. If you go back one step later, which is right here at the bottom here, that's also from the, could be from the fast or the slow side, but it's like number 3. So each one from 1 to 4, their ratio of density level is between 1 and 4. And on the, like we was talking about on the fast side, once you get to number 4, there's no space. On the slow side of the velocity unit, once you get to number 4, there's lots of space because the ratio of churning and evolving is done so slowly, which means that they are opposite of each other, but the opposite point of view is occurring between player by player or performer by performer. It's not a universal, fixed something that you have to match each other. You can get lost, but that happens only when you lose your sense of mobility and you lose your connection with the other players. But you're not dependent upon the other players to provide you with the terrain in which you have to move through. That's your quality. That's each person's own quality. And once you learn one velocity unit, either fast or slow, you can play any of my pieces. You just can't play all of it, but you can play any of it, you know. And the portion that you play would be sufficient enough to be called a piece of music. You see. Yes.
So I think this is such a fascinating idea that the scores, I'm using this word now, the symbolic language, this way of communicating this symbolic language is extremely specific. But at the same time, there is no, it's so hard to I think it's very hard for me at least to comprehend this because my listening has been developed in a way where sounds ends up being right or wrong. But the specificity here is not about right or wrong sounds. The specificity is in terms of the velocity, in terms of the longs and shorts, and the way of shaping them with the silences on either side to make it appear as a long and short, right?
And the person.
And the person.
You
So,
see.
yes, so that brings me back to your, I don't know, I forget if I said it, but you talk about, I forget if I read it, but you talk about working with instruments and people. So you instrumentate, orchestrate your pieces and your ensembles and your recordings, not just with the instruments that would play each of these routings, as you call them, and not just that person's abilities as a musician, but also with them as a whole human being.
Yes.
Could you talk a bit about that?
Well, yes. You know, like the journey of making art is such a great responsibility. So if you're going to make an ensemble, you want to try to find the correct personality for that ensemble. But more specifically, depending on the score that's being played, you need to find that kind of person that can connect and make that score work properly, and have the ability to double dream. I'll call it that, meaning that you have something in front of you, of which you have to also create a dream that matches that. And I just read the other day Dr. Martin Luther King talking about dream, and he said the difference between a dreamer and a visionary is that the dreamer dreams with the eyes closed, and the visionary has eyes open. But if you look at that, he's not just talking about sight. He's talking about the ability to comprehend. A closeness cannot be, locks out the meaning of whatever we're checking out. But the openness, that is a visionary openness, is about the possibilities on a large, large scale. So I would say the same thing about the personnel of any ensemble, matching the ensemble with the piece and the personnel, is that that quality of dreaming, that quality of not having to ask or look at anybody else's research in the ensemble. It should be special. It should be unique. It should not be polluted by, let's say that Nina told me what her research was. Already that performance would be at fault, because the clearest idea of being creative, responding to your inspiration, is that it's a one-person deal that's fixed inside of the ensemble, which makes it a collective, but much more interesting if we all go in the same direction, but not knowing exactly how we're going to get there. So that kind of a character is needed. And different levels, they don't all have to all be on the same level, because, nothing is like that. And actually, if things are all the same, nothing happens. You know, you can't, if you're walking at the same speed of something you're pushing, it doesn't happen. It has to have that tug. And the same thing with the levels of people in the ensembles. The thing that makes an ensemble so beautiful is that the quality of reflection, like after a rehearsal, if you can run that rehearsal across your mental state in a few seconds, let's say the rehearsal was an hour and a half, you should be able to recapture that whole rehearsal in about 10 seconds at the least, or the most. That kind of a person will grow each time the rehearsal comes around, or the performance. And that's what I look for.
Yes, so much of your the work you put out into the world for us who gets to listen to it and interact with it as musicians is really an invitation to reflection, research, going deep, and then bring that to the group, to the setting. Many may wonder what the colors represent here in this score. Can you talk about that?
Yes,
I think
yes.
that's a great example in how we all get to bring something very special to a performance.
Well, the colors are reference, but the scientific quality of the colors are what I'm most interested in. For example, I use the light spectrum for all the colors in my scores. They're all based off the light spectrum. And why? Well, because color has so many meanings to human beings, or so many representation in society. For example, you have industrial colors, you have psychological colors, you have emotional colors, and all kinds of notion about color. The most important one that I have found in the research is that color springs from light and dark. Should I say that again? Color springs from light and dark, not from black and white, not from white light. It comes from dark and light. Where they meet, it generates, it produces color. Okay? And the reason I mention that because often in spiritual texts, you find people referring to white and black and stuff like that. And that's a mistake because it's darkness and it's lightness that create this thing that we call color. So I use the light spectrum, and from that, it gives it its scientific base. It makes color, or rather, it liberates color from how we think about it as humans. For example, if I ask you, what is the most recognized color on this planet? Who would be able to tell me? All of you would, right? Yes, I'll answer for you. Yes. The color that's first recognized by the smallest child is blue. And the most recognizable color on this planet is blue. Okay. So blue is kind of one of the fundamental basis of the light spectrum. It goes from orange, yellow, and so on and so on. Those things have a number to them, which is called the Angstroms number. They have divided by the kind of light and darkness inside of those colors. So let's take a reference. Let's say that I want to reference this red. I think this is it here, right? This red here. Let's say that I'm going to reference that as let's say blood. Okay. Let's say cherry, a red cherry. And let's say watermelon. So what's the most important thing about blood? What does it do for the body? Yes, it carries oxygen to all the cells. It's responsible for all kinds of regeneration of the body. Okay, but it also has white and red cells. The plasma has all kinds of characteristics that we could deal with. And the difference between that and a red cherry is what? Well, a red cherry has a cover on it. It's rounded. It has a seed inside of it. And the fruit or the stuff that's inside of it is not even red. No. And the watermelon, I reference this as red because the core of the fruit inside of it is red, not the outside. You know, and if you look at the watermelon, it's got a skin, it's got this kind of core stuff that's kind of hard, then it's got this kind of membrane around it. And then you have seeds that have a part that goes around orderly, not just over here and over there. It's fixed in a structural way that is really totally designed in the most appropriate way. So what does a musician do with that? They take those particular pieces of information and generate musical properties. And it's not done where you sit down at the computer and figure it out in let's say, the next few hours. It's done instantly inside of the performers from the beginning to the end. And that makes it special. And that specialness is called art. Okay.
And then there's a very intriguing symbol that I see here, and it's called the create symbol. And that's a very unique symbol.
Right here.
And it has evolved tremendously.
Okay, now, well, I have to say that every time I talk about create, I get a little bit in trouble. And I like trouble. For many, many years, writers have spoke about that music that they call jazz. They've spoke about it in all kinds of ways. And in the early days, they just talked about playing and making music. They didn't say, oh my gosh, we are improvising, or we're doing this, or we're doing that. The writers made that limitation onto that music, okay? And for yourself, you can Google the idea of improvisation, and you'll find something very interesting about it. It kind of entered the picture 2 or 3 hundred years before the BC curve, okay? And then it entered again around the 3rd, 4th, 5th, or 6th 100 years after the BC curve. Both of them occurred in Italy. Both of them had to do with acting or theater, not music. Okay, so a few years ago, maybe 3, maybe 4, I don't know, but some years back, I decided that I would get out of the improvisation zone, and I decided I would do just like the Almighty who made creation. I would make creation in a smaller way because humans supposed to be able to make creation. And so this creation that I made is represented in this symbol here. So when a performer come there, I don't ask them to make something out of what they just played or to pull something out of what they practice. I want them to make an authentic, real, new investment of something that's musical, that gives a completely new shape to the piece of music that we're playing as a collective. So create really should be understood in the same way as any of the creation myths that you read around the planet or any of the spiritual ideas about creating. They all are the same thing, just different in proportion. This is a human creation here, whereas those other ones, we may define them as the big picture. Yeah.
And we've spoken for some length of time now about this one score, and you and I have spoken about this one score, which is Fall from the Four Symphonies of Summer. Fall as referring to the seasons. We have spoken about it, I don't know how many hours altogether, and we will certainly speak for many more hours, you and I, about this. It's so rich, and like I was saying earlier, while it's specific, it does not indicate rightness or wrongness in the sounds that are being produced. I think one of the ways that you show that, Wadada, is that you create specific routings for each musician. I mean, there is a general rule or schema for this score, but on the top of that, you create specific routings for a specific iteration or realization, and then for each specific performer. Can you speak a bit about the way you think about routings?
Yeah, well, first of all, the routings come out of the ideas of cycles. And again, like I talked about sound having long and short relationship, well, cycles have that same kind of notion, a large cycle or a small cycle, okay? And what happens is when you have more than one person playing 2 iterations of cycles, you get a spontaneous structure that evolves that wasn't planned or designed by anyone. It happens out of relationship of how the 2 people kind of interact. And each long and short cycle is also unspoken in the ensemble. You don't say to the person next to you, I'm going to play a short cycle or I'm going to play a long cycle. You keep that to yourself so that, again, the performance is not in default by too much information. And when you have too much information, it becomes dependent. I like for it to move along, and as we move along, you discover how that partnership is acting. You know, so that's probably the core of it. But say, for example, if I had a repetitious score, is there one that we could pull up the one with the what is it, Sarah? Yeah, right there, right there. That's good. A lot of people like to say, well, this is a traditional notation right here, but they would be shocked if I told them it wasn't. It looks like it's traditional, but it's not. Um, let's see, there's A. Oh, I need to point. This section is A here. Between this bracket and this bracket, when they face each other, it indicates reoccurrence. And when they are opposite from each other, it's contrasting the reoccurrence. So there's a reoccurrence, there's a contrast, there's a reoccurrence, there's a contrast, and contrast. Then it moves forward. The point that I want to make is that the routing would be written at the top. It would say A 2 times, and then there's an enter repeat right here 2 times. And then that's the enter repeat, and it'll recur again, so that's twice. And then the next thing it says, so it says A times 2, and then at the top, you put it at the top in parentheses, B2. And then it moves to C. And in C, what's in C is space. There's nothing there. Then it reoccurs again. So now we have A 2 times, B, the 2 in parentheses, C, and D. And that whole cycle could reoccur again. Okay. This particular one is a piece written for my mom. Her name is Sarah. And it has a tango feel. I wanted to have somewhat of a tango feel. It's very, how can I say it? It's much different from the body of the work. This is like the prelude, and then there's a postlude that has the same, similar kind of stuff. But the routing occurs based off of how many repeats in whatever section it's going to be in. Sometimes it's in A, which means it's in the front of the reoccurrence. Sometimes it happens in B or C or D, the reoccurrence. Okay. And when you have that, in this case, everything is here is moving along together, but in some parts of the score, these activities happen independent of each other. So the routing becomes very important. You learn the routing as opposed to sight reading the routings. Because if you're sight reading the routings, you end up getting lost. You see? So you learn that there's A is time 2 with a small b, A, B, small b, C, D. Is that cool? Yes. Yes.
I'm wondering, do you want to look at some of the other scores,
Yes,
or do you
let's
want
do
to?
that.
Yeah,
Let's do that. Yeah.
maybe quickly going. So you can see the range of the scores, and these have, as Claudia, I believe, mentioned. Do you want to
go back to the first one?
Okay.
Yeah. This one is kind of new, quite new for me. It was basically an experiment with strokes, okay, and all of my work is basically on paper, really high quality paper, cheap paper, envelopes, whatever I find to put it on. But when I get in my little space, I usually use high quality paper. This one here is the ensemble actually follows the strokes of the waves, okay? And right in the blue here, you can see again this create symbol. And you can see how it has begun to look like very different from the one we saw before. And all of them are different because when I start out, I don't try to remember what the last one looked like. And I don't try to copy the one that I did before. And often I don't know if I'm going to be able to complete one of them until I've completed it. I'm talking about just that symbol there, you see, because it has to feel right, look right, sound right inside of me, not outside. And look up at the top here. That's one of the new types of velocity units. Remember I showed you the one before where it was made pretty sharp and unique and clear. Well, they are beginning to look like very beautiful creatures. Look at that. Look at that. It gets right onto the wave. And I'm actually very happy that it looks like that. Okay? Because language should grow and the expression should also grow. Okay? Go to this one here is called Sahana. Go to the next one. Yes, sir. This one here, this is new. Both these two, I started working on them last year, but I finished them this summer in vacation. This one is, this one is called Kashala, by the way. Those are my daughters. They're sitting right there. What's new? What's unique about this one? I've started to include books inside of the scores, and I have a couple of them before that had books, but now the books have meaning of Ankhrasmation. That's what that word says right there. There's there's the rhythm unit right there, and all those little dots represent rhythm units because as I grow older and come through this language and get more familiar with what it is, I discovered that one symbol could represent all of the rhythm units, and that one velocity unit could represent all of the velocity units. And when you discover that, you end up doing stuff like this. All of those are rhythm units coming out of the book of Ankhrasmation, going all the way up in there, and they're making connection and looping. This is a star, so it's also like you got a book comes out of the earth because it's paper supposedly, and then you got a star, which is actually somewhat on the same level as the book, but stars are generally up in the air, so to speak, unless you're dealing with stardust. Is that what it's stardust? Yeah. And these little creatures here, they are some kind of sonic beings that has to be articulated in the music. And why are they flying? They're flying because if you want to get to one part of the score faster than reading it, you take one of these little creatures and you fly there, like over to the star, you fly all the way up to there. And the time between there and there, that is between here and here, if you played that, you would have to play this, pause between here, play a little bit of that, pause, play that, pause. You could either go this way or this way. Wherever you go, once you finish a color, you would have to pause. But to get there faster, you take one of these creatures and just move right on up there, and you start dealing with that. Okay. And this is my favorite color in all my scores. I always deal with blue. And the reason I deal with blue, because blue has such a fascinating history. I told you about blue earlier, about the most recognized color. The first recognized color by a child is blue. Okay. But also, light, when it penetrates water, blue penetrates the deepest into the water. It goes all the way down to the black, where there's nothing can be seen. So it's almost always in some of the scores to kind of represent that part of the light spectrum. And let's move to another one. Oh, this is new. These little strokes here, they're like barcodes, but they're not barcodes. I was just stroking them in, and I thought that it was a nice little creation. But then when I go back and look at my friend Marion Brown's a drawing he did for me, he had these little barcodes there. So inadvertently, I had been influenced by his score, which I didn't know. I thought I was thinking this all by myself. But no, it was an influence from Marion Brown. So it's kind of a tribute to him as well when I have them in these new scores. Just thought you would want to know that. Let's do a couple more, and then take your question. Yes, 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 yes. What time is it now? 8:30? Yeah, one more and then we got, yes, sir. All right. This is an interesting one. I was out here last May, and all of these were inserts we put inside of the four symphonies, and they kind of just existed on the page, and they were done just to be inserted. But when I went back home, I decided that, well, I mean, I might as well make a score out of it, you know, by itself. So that's what I did. I added this portion here, and I added more color into them, into this particular one here. Yeah, and I don't know if you can see this, but this one here and that one there, it's very similar. It's very similar. So how do I use them in the score? Originally, they were done just for the voice, and each of these, this one, this one, this one, this one, the it's the voice box, it's the throat, and it's the mouth, and you shape those particular shapes that's inside of it to produce your sound. And same here to produce your sound, and the different colors give you this registration of how you reference those colors. They do modify, like the purple modified is yellow a little bit, but it 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 makes that when you go up here that there's a different kind of relationship to that purple. And how would you reference purple? Well, you could reference as an African plant which grows in the dark, and it's always purple, you know. Or you could reference as like a immature grape. Yeah, yeah. All right, last one. Can you see that? That's a velocity unit. That's a velocity unit. They constantly change because I told you before, I don't try to remember what they look like in the last score. And when I get started, I just get started. And then I'm hoping in my heart that I can finish it and that it will look like something. And it does when I'm finished. Yeah, yeah. Today we rehearsed this piece, and they were saying, "Wow, this is such a beautiful bird." And I said, "Yeah, it is a bird. It's a velocity bird." Yeah, that's cool. I think you got enough for today, just of that part of it. Totally agree, right?
So I know many in this room have studied this music for a number of years, and it's a constantly rich source to go back to, as you can see and hear and sense. And I think it's 2 years ago that you were in Finland. 2 years ago? Yes. Mr. Smith was in Finland in a 16th century old church. And there he spent time. It was out in the countryside. And he brought his instrument and his heart and his imagination. And he recorded 3 CDs. And they're going to come out very soon. And now he's going to play for us some excerpts from that collection. And after that, we can take some questions and answers. Yeah, new excerpts, because as you can see, it's always evolving. Always, always, always. For you, especially. That's right.
Yeah, just trumpet, and it's just trumpet and the church and me. Just trumpet and church and me 4 days in a row. Really kind of a marvelous time because I carried a couple of my notebooks there with me. And so each night I would look through the notebook to see what I wanted to record that day. And that morning, if I felt cool, I would write something also. So I went in there with a lot of material, and I just moved through the creation. I'm gonna play a little bit for you.
Oh, okay. Oh, thanks. Any chance of showing us, playing for us one of your scores here, or part of it?
Yeah, I'll do that.
Cool.
That's easy.
Easy for you.
No, it's easy for anybody that wants to take the courage. I mean, if you want diamonds, now, if you want pearls, you have to go to the sea. You know. That's all it takes. A little bit of courage. All right, got it. Which one did I do? I'm asking that question. Which one did I do? You know?
Don't have a clue. Well, I'll take a guess.
Okay, take
I'm
a
going to
guess.
say the third one from the left with the horizontal sort of a bird thing.
Where? Right there?
Yes.
Give the man a hand. That's all right. All right, something else? Come on, you gotta have questions. I mean, if I was sitting out there, I would have a lot of questions.
Hey, Wadada, it's so great to hear you and to hear you talk about your incredible conceptions for your music. I have two questions. One is you spoke about not improvising anymore for the past few years.
Yeah.
So the first piece you played before this second piece, how would you describe that?
I would describe it as a create. Yes.
All right, all right.
Yeah, see the difference? See, when I made create because when you really make art, you're actually creating. And when I made create, a lot of the critics says that Wadada has just got another name for improvisation. No, it's not true. It's an entirely different mental state, and it's an entirely different kind of authority of what you're doing. Yeah.
Thank you. That helps to clarify for me how you approach it. Did
Yeah.
you take it back to that 16th century church that you...
Well, today I want to make something new for here. So this became the 16th century church.
I see.
You see, that church is all like bricks and stones and stuff like that. And this one has like what, glass and wall and curtain, you know. So
Yeah.
I made the new create around the idea of that church, but it's here today. Yeah.
Thank you. My second question is the first score that we saw.
Or the one with the
very,
gold.
very first one.
Yes.
It was framed on the outside
Yes.
with a lot of luminescent white.
Mm.
And could you talk about that?
Yes, that's my favorite one. Talk about what's happening with that score is, I guess maybe 20 years ago, I was on tour in Germany, and I bought one of the morning papers only because they had a sun on the cover. That paper I bought, and I took it back to America, brought it back to America with me. And then some 5, 6, 7 years afterwards, I refound it one day in my house, and I cut it out of the paper, and I started Xeroxing it. And I started Xeroxing the Xerox, and I Xeroxed the Xerox, the Xerox, the Xerox, until it got down to a quality where I could create something on it, and I started creating. Now, the photograph shows these fire tongues coming off because it's a picture of the sun made with high quality lenses. Okay, but I see when you make art, you want to make art because it's not like that photograph, and that's why all the Xeroxing took place. And after Xeroxing it down to what I wanted, I made it like I wanted. And then just before the exhibit at the Renaissance in Chicago, Hamza and John Corbett, Hamza Walker and John Corbett was going to come to my house. And so I got up early that morning, maybe 3 o'clock or something like that, and that's when all the yellow came in, okay? And then when they got to my house, I had it underneath lights to try to make it dry, but it was still wet when they got there. So what I'm trying to tell you is that those scores, there are 4 of them. Actually, there are 8 of them now, but there's 4 of them. The first 4, the process is like a 10 or 12-year journey from finding that photograph to the Xerox and to the painting, to putting the stuff on it, and then finally adding the final touch, which was the gold. The flares around the corners. These are my stylized flames, but now I call it, I call it the rim around the sun. And that rim is so important when we perform this piece. The rim acts as some kind of stabilizer where the sound itself follows the curve of the shape of the score on the outside, and that's the rim. And then when I give a cue, which is an up and down stroke with the hand, the performers can leave the rim and go inside either the surface, which is the material on top of it, or they can go to the core, which is unseen here, and it's also called the unknown zone, or they can go in back of it, which is also called the unknown zone because you can't see it. And that person that goes back there, they have the biggest opportunity of creating. And it's quite a journey at that point. And so when the cue is given the next time, wherever each of the performers slipped off the rim into the surface or the core or in the back of it, they must return to the same spot and continue. And that happens, let's say that the first time the stroke goes down, that's one complete cycle that has all the other small cycles in it. And the stroke to go up again, that's the second cycle. And then from there, it would probably move to number 2 or number 3 or number 4 of the 4 symphonies. And I call them symphonies because the S in the sun and the S in symphony. And I don't mean symphony like Beethoven. I mean symphony like poetry. You see? Yes. Yeah. That's close, right? Yeah. Oh, yes.
Hello.
Hi.
I want to know why when you play your instrument, you have your bell facing toward the ground?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, one thing I can hear, because the sound hits the floor, and if you got sharp or rather intense ear sensibility, you can hear the difference in it, the lower I am or the higher I am. And you notice sometimes I want the sound not to be on the floor. I lift it up. Okay, that's the main reason. I bend over because when I bend over, it concentrates my diaphragm, and it allows me to have perfect control. When you play up like that, your diaphragm is actually hanging. But when you play like that, your diaphragm is actually part of you. It's not hanging, you see, and you have incredible strength. And then the other part comes in the knees. See how the knees are in there? That, I can move back and forth on that because, well, let's say it this way. Sometimes my back hurts when I'm doing it. And because it hurts when I'm doing it, if I go a little bit lower, it relieves the back sometimes. And I can go all the way down and still produce a really good quality of sound. Yeah, that's a nice one. Thanks. All right. Yes, somebody, microphone over here.
Good evening, Wadada.
Good
Good to see you again.
Yes, look.
I have a question. Would you object if someone interpret your language, the long and short concepts, as creative opposites, in the sense that there's no definitive definition for long? Long is only long in its relationship to short. And short is only short in its relationship to long.
Yes.
As I look at Duke Ellington, I think even before the discovery of your language, he was using some of these concepts, perhaps unknowingly. When he wrote Mood Indigo one time,
No, I think
slow,
he knew.
and then next time fast. He used a lot of loud, soft concepts. The way he used the baritone saxophone, instead of on the bottom, maybe on the top of the lead and so forth.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts about that, using your language to evaluate other musicians?
I think it's appropriate. I have the Ankhrasation language. I use it for analysis sometimes. There's a publication, I don't remember what it's in, but it's out there somewhere, where I analyze one of Anthony Braxton's composition 118, and I use just the Ankhrasation language to analyze the piece, and when I started analyzing, I discovered some things that were that you don't see on the surface. For example, inside that piece is recorded, by the way. It's called Composition 118. What I discovered that there was a phrase leading up to what I call the musical moment in his piece that came right out of Joseph Oliver, you see. And no one hearing that music would be aware of it, but if you listen to it like 50 or 60 times, and then you kind of stroke it out and put it into that language, you can see that. What an Ankhrasmation analysis does, it shows one, how the music moment developed and what's unique about it and what's common. The common part I call activity, music activity, because it covers the personality of the player. But the musical moment I call the unique element inside of the piece. So analysis it can be used for that, but also the way you were thinking about it in terms of long and short, it can be used, you see. I'm only opposed to not trying to figure out how to use something. That's all I'm opposed to. Yeah. All right.
Hi.
Okay, you be next. Next. Go ahead.
First of all, thank you so much for being here. So your work feels very singular or maybe idiosyncratic, right, in the best way. And I've been to a few of the events that Professor Eidsheim has put on with you. And each time I learn a little bit more about this symbolic language. And I guess I'm wondering, because it is a language, because you've conceived of it as a language, and languages are shared, right? And you've shared it with us. If I wanted to, I mean, not that I don't, but let's say someone wanted to write their own kind of piece using this language. Do you see that as a possibility? Because it feels like something that's so a part of you.
They do it already.
Okay.
Many people do.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and they attach sometimes different meaning along with the meanings that I've attached also to them. And that's possible because when you look at any sound, that's at that moment you're the creator of it. You determine what it should look like, sound like, and some of the aspects of how it has to be, how its meaning has to take place. So no, that happens already, you know. If you learn one or two symbols, you can already go and write a piece. You know, anyone can. My granddaughter Jayan Bell write pieces. Yeah. In the car on the way to New York to see me perform, when they walk in, they throw their scores on the table and say, "Here, Granddad, we wrote this for you." You know. My grandson Lamar came up to me when he must have been like, he wasn't 12, and my daughter has one of the scores on the wall, and he says, "Granddad, can you teach me this?" I said, "Yeah." You know. I know. Who's next? Yeah, okay. And then you.
My name is Phil Musra. I'm going to leave a flyer with your friend. I'm on YouTube. I'm a sax player, but my question is this. I knew you from Chicago. Me and my twin brother in Douglas, you were up
Oh,
at
yeah.
Television.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, so I knew you from Chicago.
We used to call you guys the Cosmo Brothers.
Right, the Cosmo Brothers and Douglas Ewart.
Yes,
and
yes,
you had
yes.
sponsored Douglas Ewart,
Yes.
Cal Arts Valencia.
Yes.
So my question is this, that, and I'll leave my YouTube flyer with your assistant there, but my question is this, is that in the 60s, it was you, it was Lester Bowie, and it was Jackson,
Yes.
were trumpeters.
Yes, yes.
Did you have an influence on them, or they have it on you, or you both, all y'all had an influence on each other?
Well, look, whoever breathes has an influence on everybody.
Okay.
That's where I'm at.
All right.
Yeah,
Okay, because
yeah.
you remember Lester Bowie, right?
I remember everybody.
Okay.
Lester Bowie, John Jackson.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Frank Gordon.
All right.
You know, all those trumpet players. I remember.
All right, cool. All right,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
what I want to find out. You
Yeah,
know,
d-
okay.
yes,
And of course, my brother Michael Cosmic died.
Yes.
The Cosmic Brothers, but you had your thing in New Haven. We went up to New Haven with you.
Yes,
too.
yes,
Okay, I'm glad you remember.
Yes.
Okay, all
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so I'll leave my YouTube flyer, Phil Musra.
I know who
with
you are
your
already.
lady. Huh?
I know who you are.
Okay,
I
cool.
know you.
All right, I'll
Yeah,
leave
yeah,
the flyer.
yeah.
All right.
Thank you. Very cool. Wait a minute. Here, and then here, and then there. And we're going to get whoever's asking the question. Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm working with a child orchestra right now, and I have had the opportunity to have some conducting with them, and I'm noticing that when we're trying to teach them how to read music, a lot of their intrinsic creativity seems to be kind of squashed, and I'm trying not to do that. And I'm wondering if you have any advice for me.
Yes, I do have. I give advice. Nobody take it, but I'm going to give it. And take that from that too. You know, one of the techniques that the AECM had for teaching young kids, because we did have a program for young kids and their parents. First, we would allow them to discover what the instrument could do, and they could do anything they wanted to do with it except break it, okay? And then once they began to gain confidence that whatever you did to that thing that they were holding in their hand, that it could be okay, okay? Then you give one or two notes to them. It doesn't have to be written out, because who said writing capture everything? Writing doesn't capture everything. It's all, the moment you think about it, it's already done. Writing is secondhand. So one or two notes, and then entice them to understand that there is structure. And by structure, you're simply going to inform them that the structure is that you're going to go for 32 seconds or 41 seconds, and you're going to stop, and then you're going to take another direction. And that gives them the sense of proportion. It lets them know that music just doesn't go fly straight across like a fly, but that it has intelligence behind it. And then ask them to start making scores. Okay? Yes, they can make scores right away. Yeah. Yeah, Belle is what, 5 years old? 6. She's been making scores since she was 5. She just make the score and show it to me. Yeah, yeah. All right, somebody else was had.
So I had a really similar question.
It's okay.
But I think I would like to expand it out to think about music departments and maybe like children of all ages, like let's say, right, learners of all ages. Like how can we imbue music departments and like music curriculum with more stimulation of the senses and imagination? Because I do feel like a lot of it, in my experience anyway, currently navigating it tends to get lost, or it seems like it's second to whatever I'm supposed to be learning.
Yes. You see, institutions, if you look at our institutions, no matter how great they are and how many famous people they put out and stuff like that, it's still the 18th century kind of mode of how you educate people, okay? I taught at Cal for 24 years, and one day the dean had courage, or maybe he just wanted to find out something. He asked, how would you dream about the music in the future? And I wrote an idea about music that I had read from Dr. Martin Luther King. He had talked about educational centers where everybody could come there, educational parks, where you would treat it like an actual park. You go there and you would stay as long as you want to, and then you would leave. Okay, so I used that model, and this is what I thought education should be. That in our Cal Arts, I said we should have a zone where we have the teachers rotating, okay, from class to class, and that the students could come and go as they please. They didn't have to be there for 5 hours or 2 hours or 3 hours. They come in, they get what they need, they go to the next class, stay 30 seconds and get what they need, they go to the next class, and that you don't grade them. Because the grading system is about teaching us how to be competitive. You don't grade them. How are you going to grade two students that are entirely different? You grade one, you penalize the other one. So the only way to make the model that you told me work, you have to rebel. Yeah. Yes.
Hi. So this is my first time hearing you performing live, and the thing that struck me most, and I think it sometimes doesn't fully come across in recordings, is your timbre. You had like a million different timbres in the short first performance that we heard before you even put the mute in the trumpet. And I watched a YouTube interview that you gave where you were talking about various famous jazz players, and you said like Miles Davis has 4 or 5 Cs, 4 or 5 Ds. And I was wondering, how many different Cs and how many different Ds do you think you have? Because I heard a lot.
I have at least 5.
I was gonna say.
And but you see, some days I sit in the room and I make as many Cs as I can during the whole time that I'm practicing. Just Cs. You see.
And that's what I was gonna ask next. Like, how did you develop the ability to have so many different timbres and fluctuate between them so quickly?
Well, but see, like the creative musician, one of the qualities is this spontaneous possibility of shaping the sound that they're playing, even on an instrument that's supposed to not have those possibilities. Like the piano. Everybody say that the piano can't do this, it can't do that. Well, you listen to Cecil Taylor, okay? The piano has the possibilities of doing anything any other instrument can do, but more, because it's a resonator at the same time. And so you don't really go in a room to practice like a B flat scale and a B flat scale and a B flat scale. You go in the room to find out what those sounds are in that scale. And to do that, you can't play all of them. You have to play one of them at a time. So let's say in the run of a week, you get up to the 7 of that B flat. And then you have explored all the possibilities, at least at that moment for you, all the possibilities of what you can do with that. And the other thing is that trumpet players, or let's say brass players, are often taught to keep everything firm. Okay, well you do that, you just make some firm notes, you know. But if you start loosening up, you're gonna hear something that kind of like is different. And you loosen up more, you hear more difference. But the awareness of you being able to loosen up is where the stuff comes at. And then you begin to map it. And then inside of a performance, you don't have to think about it. Because what your inspiration tell you to do, you already have the skills to do it now. You bend it, you float it, you shape it, you make it thin, you make it small, whatever the moment is telling you is appropriate. Yeah. Oh, sorry.
I'm very curious to know about the rehearsal.
Mm-hmm.
What happens there when you're working with musicians who you're just introducing to your approach?
Mm-hmm.
Is it anything like what you did tonight? Is it very short or is it longer? You've made me think a lot about long and short.
Well, it really depends, but let me say something about rehearsal. Rehearsal is often misunderstood by musicians. Musicians will have a score in their possession for 3 weeks or a month, okay? And then when time comes for rehearsal, they'll come to rehearsal with just a casual knowledge of that score, okay? And they think that rehearsal means to practice. No, practice comes first. You learn through practicing, and then the word rehearse, what does it really mean? It means to rehear. That's what rehearse means. It's got a re in it, and it's got a hear in it. It means to rehear. So what you rehear, and now what you practice in your apartment or house or backyard or basement, along with the other performers who did the same thing. And now all of you as an ensemble, and that ensemble has something to do with unification. As an ensemble, you are able now to actually rehear that. And then the key to rehearsal is not to kill the music in the rehearsal. A lot of people kill music in rehearsal. So that when you get on stage, it's like you're frozen. I don't mean physically frozen. Your creativity is frozen. You see? So you have to have whoever's leading that ensemble, have to have the skill to know when that rehearsal is enough. Because if you walk on stage and you have no adrenaline shooting through your vein, you're frozen. You know, meaning that it's just a specimen that somebody digs up or something. You want to come on stage and you want to create something that's never been heard. You see, so practice, rehearse, perform. That's the state. Yeah. I fight about it all the time. All the time. And people still show up halfway prepared. Yeah. Yeah, it's the state of the world. You know. Who else got something for me? All right. Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
First, thanks for being here. Every time I come and hear you speak, I went to your event at Fowler last year. I feel like my mind is opened and like musical constructs are totally lifted. I also want to like pay gratitude to the questions about childhood development while learning music, because actually when I look at your score, it really reminds me of like how my mind worked when I was a child. So I guess my question is, when you decided to go from improvising to creating, was that a long process, or was it an intuitive one event where you were like, I need to do something new with my sound and like what I'm making?
Well, it had to do with the fact that from the early 70s, I had played in a lot of free improvisation ensembles all across Europe, from the mainland Europe to Greece. And if you're smart and you get on stage and you do this kind of free improvisation stuff, after a while you can figure it all out. Okay. And yes, most of the people that talk about improvisation now, they talk about the community properties inside of it. But when I got tired of those kinds of moments where it always started the same, the middle portion was always the same, and the ending was always the same, and often the ending would be bypassed multiple times before the piece stops. Okay. Yes, it's true. My longest moment on stage was 45 to 50 minutes sitting on the floor and refusing to play or sing a note, because the ensemble I was playing with, they had missed so many endings. I thought if I sit on the floor and put my trumpet on the side of me, they would say, well, wow, Wadada is finished, so maybe we should finish. But guess what? They went on for another 45 minutes. It's true. And of course, you know, I would never play with them again. That's the other thing. But primarily, the inner core of the free improvisation community is that they jump in as fast as they can, all of them. And once they jump in, they are continuously competing for the lead. It's just like in regular society where the community is out there constantly trying to get the biggest house, the biggest car, the biggest bank, the longest vacation, all that stuff. And then you have a little guy like me that just kind of plays something that's got a nice long sound and a curve on it. And for just an instant, it changes the music. So what that tells me, that there's a big difference between just doing something, though you may love it, and actually trying to make art, which has some other kind of guidelines and quality. So it wasn't a long journey to say, no, I'm not going to do that anymore. In fact, what I'm trying to tell you, from the 70s onward, my attitude was that I didn't enjoy that. And then I stopped when people say, well, will you come and play with me on this? Say, what are you going to do? Or, well, we're going to improvise. And I would say, no. Because I want to make art. If you can understand that, I want to make art. You know. Yes.
Hello. Thank you for sharing again. And I feel like there's a really powerful energy going on, and which is like really inspiring. Thank you. And as a co-arts grad student, I have like 2 questions for you. And the first one is like when I saw your pictures on the screen, and it somehow like reminds me like some really famous like artists from the 20th century, like the color palettes you chose or the strings you chose. And my question was like, do you? It's because like there's like a lot of freedom on it, like really passionate passions, but yet I'm wondering like how did you choose the color palette, because it's so mature in some way. It's just for me like it's just not just randomly organized.
No, it's not random. No.
Yeah, so I'm curious like what's your inspiration, or does it just like based on your like personal experiences?
No,
or?
no. It's based off my inspiration and how I have to kind of like reflect and meditate on it. Like I don't just jump into a score. Sometimes a piece will come and I'll jot it in my notebook or on a loose piece of paper. Okay. And then when I go back to make a piece out of it, I walk through it. That is, I live through it, deciding what else I need to do to the shapes, what kind of color I need. I actually map out colors on paper that doesn't have nothing to do with the score. And I strip them with lines by each other to see just their relationship to each other. And once I'm gotten into that state, then I find the right moment to go back and work on it. And that moment has to be spontaneous. And I have to feel something. I don't just work because I'm working. I have to feel something. And that feeling intunes me to select those different colors, those different strokes. The piece that we going to use on Sunday is to create something inside of a space. There's probably 3,000 strokes in there, but they're pen strokes, and they're not like that. They're hammered, okay? When I'm doing that, when I get started on that, I have no idea if I'm going to stop and lay it aside or if I'm going to finish it. And something inside of me keeps me moving forward on it, and therefore I somehow finish it. But if you ask me in the beginning or somewhere close to there what I'm going to do with it or what will I finish it, I can tell you flatly I don't know if I'm going to finish it. Because I have to feel something. I have to be inspired in order to do it. And I've been doing this since I was 12, that is being inspired. Okay, I'm 77, so that's 60-some years of understanding how this thing moves, or rather how I catch a little bit of it. Because it's not in us, it's in creation. That is this inspiration. And we have to pull it, you know, just like any kind of other system or device that captures stuff. That's close, right?
I think
All
that's
right.
a beautiful moment now.
hi.
Let's do one more. Let's do one more.
You want one more?
I
Okay.
just have a couple quick questions. Thanks for enlightening us. Is there any correlation between Ornette Coleman's harmonics music and what you're doing? And the other question was, you said some word that started with an A. I didn't understand it.
Ankhrasmation.
What is that?
Ankhrasmation.
Mation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ankh is the vital life force. It's the symbol that you find in the tomb paintings.
Right.
You see, and it's also a key that if you look at the pyramid paintings, they point to this pineal
gland.
Yeah, and they point to the throat.
Okay.
And they point above the head, and they point at the heart.
Okay.
So that's the vowel life force.
Wow.
And then, of course, Ras is come from Amharic,
Right.
which is Ethiopian, which
Language.
means head,
Okay.
or creator, or father.
Okay.
And then Ma is the mother sound.
Okay.
So the language that I discovered, not created, discovered, is called Ankhrasmation, which means that I am the production of the vowel life force coming from my mother and my father.
Oh, great. Thank you.
And what was that other question?
I'm just wondering if there's any correlation between Ornette Coleman's harmonics music and what you're doing.
Yes. No, there's no correlation except the fact that it's creative. That's the first thing. And the second one is that on Sunday, you see, most people are in the dark about homologics. Homologics, Ornette Coleman has a scale, it's called a homologic scale. And what he did, he made all the sharp notes on one side as a V, and that's called his homologic clef. And in the middle, he made all the notes natural in that V shape. And then on the opposite side of that, he made all the notes flat. And that's the most concrete element that anyone has seen regarding homologics. There's a lot of conceptual talk about it, but most of them are wrong, you see. But what I did in my last residency last May, I made 3 long pages like that, both natural, sharp, and flat. And we're going to play that as part of our performance on Friday, tomorrow, at the medal ceremony. So that's how close it is to that. But I may mention one other thing. I have 13 string quartets, okay? The first string quartet that inspired me to write string quartets was Ornette Coleman string quartet, okay? Now, a lot of people, when they talk about my string quartets, they want to ask me about Schoenberg and Berg and Webern and all kinds of people. And I just tell them that, okay, I know that music because I'm smart, you see? No, I'm serious. I know that music. I mean, I know how to read scores. I read scores. But my influence come from Ornette Coleman, and Ornette Coleman's influence come from Ornette Coleman. Okay? So that's the closeness of us. But also, I used to visit Ornette Coleman when he lived in Paris and when in New York. And if you ever visit Ornette Coleman, you don't sit and talk about butterflies and angels or something like that. What you do is, in his case, he give me his trumpet and he get his saxophone and he start playing. And then he say, play something, and you play something. And then he'd do it again, he say, play something. And then he'll start showing you how he thinks about music. And then when you leave there, you're walking like you're floating because you've just been in the embrace of somebody that's natural, you see. He learned by discovery, not by being taught, you see. If he had been taught, the notion of this music that he created would never have occurred. Yes. Thank you. Thanks for coming. I'm so glad you came because today I rode through lots of traffic going and coming. I just want to tell you that. And I got back to my space at the guest house and everything was hurting and feeling strange. But, you know, I roughed it up and pulled up my chin and stepped out with Nina and came over here. My daughters came. Look, I'm on fire.
So I want to thank you all so much for coming, and again, thank you to the Hammer. There will be a chance to have a little bit more of the snacks and everything delicious that is back there, and Wadada will stick around a little bit, and you can talk with him and all the questions that you weren't able to ask. I wanted to let you know that we have more activities with Wadada Leo Smith at UCLA as part of his 2019 UC Regents lectureship. So next week we have a workshop, an Ankhrasmation workshop on Tuesday, November 12th. It's in room 1151, 11 a.m. But just look on the website at activities at UCLA, so you get all the coordinates. And on Wednesday, November 13th, the day after, will be an open rehearsal with a string quartet that Wadada String Quartet, the Red Choral Quartet, will be recording on the following Sunday, but you'll get the chance to see how he works with one of the ensembles that has been the most intimate with his music. So that's an extremely unique opportunity to be able to participate in that. And then last but not least, tomorrow, Friday, November 8th, is the time that we're going to celebrate the Chancellor awarding you with your second doctoral degree, the UCLA medal, and that will happen at UCLA again at the Austin Music Center at 7 p.m. And you're all very welcome to join us celebrating.